The micro, small and medium-scale enterprises is the engine room for national economic growth and development. However, the sector is challenged by several factors. The MSME Clinic is designed to bridge the gap between federal government agencies and small businesses. My guest on the program this week speaks about government's step to encourage the growth of the sector. Hello and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Ibrahim Adra. Following the announcement of the second phase of the easing of the lockdown, the Federal Capital Territory Administration met with religious leaders and health experts. A reason is to decide on further guidelines for the second phase of the ease on lockdown in the nation's capital. And that's what we will be looking at in FCT in Focus segment today.
On Monday, June 1st, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announced a further relaxation of the lockdown in the Federal Capital Territory, with certain conditions for the reopening of worship centers.
Effective from tomorrow, Tuesday, the 2nd of June 2020, the easing of the lockdown will be characterized by the following. 1. The nationwide curfew will remain in place, but the timing of this will be reduced to 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. There will be full opening of the financial sector, with banks now allowed to operate normal working hours 5 days a week.
The FCT administration is taking it from there with this meeting with the religious leaders and medical experts. The idea is to review the guidelines issued by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, particularly as they concern places of worship.
Why do you say that? Yes.
After extensive deliberations, the meeting agreed to adopt the guidelines as released by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 with regards to the reopening of places of worship in the FCT under the second phase of the eased lockdown for the next 4 weeks. The meeting adopted over 30 protocols guiding the reopening of places of worship in the territory, including the leadership of the churches and mosques will be responsible for full compliance with these rules. Ensuring the supply of running water and soap or use alcohol-based hand sanitizers at entry and exit points and in all high-contact locations, including bathrooms. Worshippers must sanitize their hands before entry. Worshippers must be subjected to temperature checks before entry. Mandatory use of face masks. Church leaders should strongly discourage all close contact, including shaking hands, hugging, kissing, handing out materials and sharing of worship implements, including prayer mats, musical organs, microphones, among others. Places of worship must keep to social distancing within their facilities. Use of floor surface marking to guide distancing and encourage people from same households to stay together. Volunteers providing support at places of worship should be limited to exact numbers needed, and none should have an underlying medical condition or be above the age of 55. Limit congregational contact times with places of worship only opening for regular church and mosque services. Churches are to open from 5 a.m. and close by 8 p.m. and each service shall be for a maximum of 1 hour with an interval of 30 minutes in between services to allow time for disinfection. Mosques are to open 15 minutes before Azan and close 10 minutes after prayers for the 5 prayers. Waiting period between Azan and Iqama should be not more than 10 minutes. Prayers are to be shortened to reduce duration of contact between congregations. For Friday prayers, mosques in the FCT are to open 20 minutes before prayers and close 20 minutes after prayers. Total time for Friday prayers, including sermons, should not exceed 1 hour. Islamia schools, all-night services, Sunday schools and children activities are to remain suspended. For mosques, only the 5-day prayers and Friday prayer services are allowed. Mass gatherings that make compliance with physical distancing impossible are not allowed. Prayer sessions should be staggered if necessary to encourage greater opportunity for physical distancing. Worshippers are encouraged to sign up for preferred service time and virtual worship options should be made available. Churches and mosques should make provision for separate entry and exit points, and measures should be taken to redirect the flow of people to avoid crowding and breach of physical distancing rules. There should be no social gatherings either before or after worship. Business outlets within the church or mosque premises should remain closed. Vulnerable individuals, such as those aged 55 years and above and those with underlying health challenges, are advised to stay at home. Improve environmental hygiene and avoid surface contamination. Churches and mosques are advised to make their premises free of carpets to allow easy and regular disinfection of floors and furniture. All windows in churches and mosques should be kept open during services, and the use of non-enclosed spaces or open-air services are encouraged. High-touch surfaces, high-traffic areas, common areas and bathrooms should be frequently cleaned and disinfected. Those responsible for sanitation should use diluted bleach to disinfect all surfaces after removal of visible dirt. Infected persons should be kept out to reduce the risk of onward transmission. Worshippers experiencing symptoms of COVID-19, including fever, cough, shortness of breath, or have had close contact with an infected person in the last 14 days, are advised to stay away. All worshippers noted to have symptoms of COVID-19 on arrival at the place of worship should be excluded from participation. Up-to-date records of staffing, including contact details and, if possible, a full record of the attendees at every service to enable contact tracing should be kept. Religious visits to homes by religious clerics are hereby discouraged. It's been over 2 months since Muslims in Abuja gathered like this to observe the weekly Jamaat Prayers. The Jamaat Prayers provided the testing ground to check adherence to the protocols guiding the reopening of worship centers. Some of the worship centers carried out the protocols on worshippers. Inside the building, the worshippers tried to follow the protocols. However, that did not last through the service. At some other mosques, the level of compliance on the first day of resumption gives little to desire.
Most of religious leaders are left behind in this COVID issue. If not some imams that are curious to search for what is happening. For instance, nobody gave me guidelines on how to operate after the opening. What are the protocols? Nobody officially communicate to me. And this is a great lap.
But it's not all the mosques in Abuja that are open for the Jamaat prayers. Officials at the Ansaruddin Mosque in Wuse 2 are waiting for further directives from their leaders.
We are expecting directive from the headquarters, Lagos State. If they give us directive to start prayer, we are going to pray. But now we are expecting directive from the headquarters. That is why we are not praying today.
1 week down, 3 more to go as the PTF continues to monitor the level of compliance with the guidelines issued to prevent the spread of COVID-19, even in the face of several relaxations in the second phase of the ease of lockdown. The PTF says it will not hesitate to review its decisions, but much will depend on the conduct of citizens in the days ahead.
Thanks for staying tuned. A face mask on its own can spread disease if not handled properly. Take responsibility. Wash your hands before and after wearing. And do not share and always wash before reusing. Also, if you have children, then please do watch out that they don't reuse face masks without the proper hygiene. Now, let's recap stories that made the headlines within the week in the nation's capital.
Nigeria has now entered into its second phase of the ease of lockdown as the federal government announces relaxation on places of worship, provided that all health protocols issued by the government and agreed by the state are obeyed. The chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 adds that the ban on interstate travels remains and all schools are to remain closed.
The Presidential Task Force submitted its recommendations, and the President has approved the following for implementation over the next 4 weeks, spanning from tomorrow, the 2nd of June, to 29th June 2020, subject to review. Ban of gatherings of more than 20 people outside of a workplace. B, relaxation of restriction on places of worship based on guidelines issued by the Presidential Task Force and protocols agreed by the state governments. Ban on interstate travels except for movement of agriculture, produce, petroleum products, manufactured goods, and essential services.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, is expecting domestic flights to resume on June 21. Senator Sirika says the date for resumption of international flights would soon be released, advising industry stakeholders to start developing protocols towards flight resumption.
Well, so regarding the tentative date for opening up of domestic flights from the 21st of June, the explanation is that this is an industry that is highly regulated, borders on safety and efficiency. So we have looked at all the things that we need to do to be able to open. They are broadly divided into two broad classifications. The first is that there is a technical aspect of it, and then there is a health side of it. You will agree with me that it's huge. We didn't sit idle after closing the airport to say, okay, well, until when they announce a new date will start. No. We have been gradually engaging the stakeholders. We've created various social media platforms. We've created avenues through Zoom, through Adobe Connect, and so on and so forth, talking to the industry on a daily basis and getting them ready to be able to take this new challenge. Indeed, we are the worst hit, and we're eager to start. We would love to start yesterday, but we must start in a very orderly, organized, safe, efficient manner so that we will achieve the intent and purpose of air travel, which is safety, efficiency, and in a very secured manner.
In the meantime, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo led members of the Economic Sustainability Committee in an interaction with the leadership of the National Assembly on the draft sustainability plan ahead of its submission to the President. The virtual meeting was attended by the Senate President, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and several other principal officers of the National Assembly, including members of the opposition. Away from the COVID-19 pandemic, President Muhammadu Buhari met with the President of the African Development Bank, Mr. Akinwumi Adesina, who is facing allegations of corruption at the bank. President Buhari says Nigeria will stand solidly behind Mr. Adesina in his bids to get re-elected as president of the bank. Thank you, sir. State governments are no longer allowed to take over road constructions on behalf of the federal government. The Federal Executive Council has decided. This is just as the Council approves a refund of over 148 billion naira to 5 states for projects executed. This reimbursement is one of the approvals at the third virtual meeting of the Council. Federal lawmakers have made slight adjustments to the parameters in the medium-term expenditure framework, which are submitted by President Muhammadu Buhari. The lawmakers raised the benchmark price for crude oil from $25 to $28 per barrel and reduced the oil production output from 1.9 to 1.8 million barrels per day. The House of Representatives is also calling for the scrapping of the excess crude account, describing it as illegal. In the meantime, the Senate has approved President Buhari's $5.5 billion external borrowing request. The approval came following consideration and adoption of the report of the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debts. Meanwhile, the lawmakers have debated the rising spate of rape across the country. During the debate of the motion in the Senate, the lawmakers called for stiffer penalties against rape in the country. The House of Representatives rejected a prayer calling for the castration of men who rape minors, but they also called for stiffer punishments against sexual offenders. Finally, the Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Abubakar Malami, has taken over the prosecution of the alleged Taraba State kidnapping kingpin, Mr. Bala Hamisu, also known as Wadume, along with 19 others from the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu. The suspects are facing 16 counts charges of terrorism, murder, kidnapping, and illegal arms running. However, only 6 of the 20 defendants, including Wadume, were present in court at the arraignment.
Welcome back. My guest is the Special Advisor to the Vice President on Small and Medium-Scale Enterprises, Mr. Tola Johnson. He talks about the 3rd edition of the MSME Awards, as well as the proposal to set up shared facilities for small businesses in some parts of the country before the end of the year. Mr. Tola Johnson, thank you very much for joining us on Dateline Abuja.
Good morning and thank you as well.
I'd like to begin with what would be the 3rd edition of the MSME Awards. I mean, and most engagement these days is going to be done virtually. A question I'm asking is, why do you insist on going ahead with it?
Well, thank you once again. What happened was that we were faced with 2 challenges: postponing or outright cancellation of the awards. But prior to the lockdown, activities towards ensuring a successful awards had already been ongoing. We had, I can say we had gotten to about 80% completion of all such activities. And I think when His Excellency Mr. Vice President briefed the President, and I think the question was, can this be, how can this be creatively achieved without putting the lives of anybody in danger? And I think, of course, Mr. VP must have said to him that we can go virtual, basically. So I think for him, it's just a sense of the little things that we can do that are within our own control. I think we should find a creative way of doing them whilst observing or respecting the protocols put in place by NCDC. So it's something that this is the 3rd year. And we do not want to, I mean, it might seem little, but there are SMEs that look forward to this every year, and we did not want to just outrightly cancel because of that. And I think we have put plans in place to ensure a seamless and very safe awards for this year.
Briefly tell me, how about the winners? How do you intend to arrive at them?
Okay, so now, during the physical ones, the winners, for instance, those that win cars, they are given their keys immediately. But in this case, what's the arrangements in place is that for those that would win cars, they would get their cars transferred to them within a week. And of course, there's usually monetary rewards as well. That is transferred to them immediately. But for the cars and the plaques itself, the awards itself, it will be transferred to you. So we will not know how and who until that after that day. But in a week, everybody will get whatever it is that they have won.
Talk to me about shared facilities, those that you're planning to set up in several locations. What would be the advantages of those?
No. As the SME clinics have been hosted by 26 states. So what we do is that quarterly, as we go to 3 states, we'll sit down, the VP sits down, it reviews what have been the major complaints in all these 3 states we have been to. Okay, give me a report, tell me what the major complaints are, what are the challenges, basically. What do we need to do? Because the purpose is not to just move around, the purpose is to solve problems, perceived problems. So we realized that one of the major issues for SMEs was access to world-class equipment or facility to produce their goods. A lot of this equipment that are world-class standard are very expensive. A lot of our MSMEs cannot afford them. So what the government did with the MSME clinic and its partners was to say, it's an ambitious idea, but let's try and put a major cluster in a state. Now, we ask the states, build a business case around a cluster that you think that if we are able to give you the facility or we're able to facilitate the equipment, it will keep running and it can run itself sustainably for a long while. So the states decide what they want. So, but one key thing is that the facilities must be set or must be put in a place where you have stakeholders that will use it. Because it defeats the purpose. You go and set up a facility somewhere, maybe, and nobody goes there. So you just have that facility abandoned. So that's we did, and what we did was that we did 2 quick pilots to gauge the mood. And what we saw was that there was a huge need, and that's why His Excellency will be now when we approach the Benue State government and stakeholders. They told us that there was a yam market called Zaki Biam Yam Market that had been there for almost 40 or over 40 years, with over 200 trailers in and out of that yam market every week. Each trailer loading 10,000 tubers of yam. So that's about 2 million.
That's a whole lot.
That's a whole lot every week. So now, but their issue was that they did not have a storage facility. They find out that half of them, sometimes within 3 days, most of the yam will go bad. So that's what they needed. Can you get us a world-class facility? And that's what the MSME clinic has been able to facilitate. Now on Tuesday, the 9th of February, on the 9th of June, the Excellency will be commissioning virtually a 200,000 capacity yam storage facility at Zaki Biam Market. You know, basically speaking, there's apart from the storage facility, what we also facilitated was like a good road, you know, public toilets, an administrative building, a security building as well for them.
This is at the federal government's expense.
This is what the federal government has done with the cooperation and collaborative efforts of the state government and its partners.
So who now runs it?
Now, for a state like for that market, now it's not one situation suits all. Now for that market, it is going to, we expect that it is going to be run by the market association. They've had this association for over 40 years, and we hear that what the association has been handling the affairs of this market for over 40 years. So we expect them, the handing over will be done. We expect them to run with it, manage the facility, basically speaking, and we also expect them that they should now leverage on this to see how that place can now become the biggest exporter of yam for Nigeria outside the country. So we can facilitate that. We'll be speaking to NEPC and Nexim to see how that can be done, basically.
How do you hold them to account? I mean, it's an organization, yes, they've been there for some time, yes, but can you really hold them to account?
No, what we do as a government, whether federal or state, is not that we hand over and hands off. No. Quarterly, there will be, let's say, for instance, an M&E session to find out. We check their books, we check the administration to see what is going on and what is, you know, we will keep engaging. Okay. We are not just going to hand over and hands off. So we'll put in place a process that allows either the state and the federal, either the state and the federal government to keep checking how the structure is being run.
We cannot conclude this conversation without talking about the stimulus package for small businesses in the country. Where are we on that?
Yeah. Now, I know that the CBN, it's unfortunate that the COVID-19 pandemic has shut down economies and businesses all over the world. And Nigeria not an exception. Now, I know that the CBN, through the NISA Microfinance Bank, has launched its own scheme for households and businesses. Now, as a household, you can collect, as a household, if you're able to prove that your household has been badly affected by the COVID-19 lockdown, you're able to access a tune of 3 million. That's the maximum. The first year of that loan is 5%. It reverts to its original 9% after 1 year because of the COVID-19 lockdown. Now, as a business, you can get it at as much as 10 million or 25 million, and it's the same principle. 5% for the first 1 year. It reverts to 9% after 1 year. I mean, this is for 4 to 5 years. For the loans. I mean, and I also know that in due time the appropriate quarters will be announcing other federal government stimulus packages that as they are being planned.
Mr. Tola Johnson, I'd like to thank you once again for coming on the program and to wish you success with your 3rd edition of the MSME Awards. Thank you
once again.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, most people with COVID-19 may show no symptoms at all. The point is to treat everyone as a potential carrier of the virus, because fact remains that at a glance, there is truly no way of knowing. So take responsibility for yourself, your family and the nation. Now let's continue this conversation online through the email address and Twitter handles on your screen. Also be sure to share anything that's happening within your locality with us. Let me also remind you that you can view the program on youtube.com/channelsweb/videos. I'm Ibrahim Adra. Stay safe and we'll see you next time.